Hi everyone, welcome to Whole Notes, a new channel and series of videos focusing on topics relating to musicians' wellness. As musicians, we often get so caught up in the art of performing, practicing, and overall getting better on our instrument that sometimes we forget about our own mental well-being and how to better take care of ourselves. My name is Izzy Guzman, and I'm a jazz trombonist, composer, and educator from Miami, Florida, and today is the first of a series of videos where I bring along guests that focus on musicians' wellness, better practice habits, discipline for musicians, and more. Today's episode features Cory Barger, a professional bassoonist, content creator, and podcast host who creates content about developing better practice habits, being kinder to yourself as a musician, and how to let out your unique personality through your instrument, even when playing in a professional orchestra. Cory and I had a really great conversation, and we dove into some pretty deep and personal topics. So I hope you enjoyed this first episode of Whole Notes featuring Cory Barger. Let's dive in.
Yeah, and actually, I think from a like professional standpoint anymore, if you're just playing, then you're not really going to get noticed, and I think you're not going to connect with your audience very well.
Exactly. There's so much more, such as like your personality and who you are. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I would love for us to discuss that as well with the community. Um, Yeah, I wanted to record a quick little like Q&A that I could share with the community about you and like what your beliefs are. So is it cool if we just do that and I'll ask you some
Yeah,
questions?
sure. I
Yeah,
should have
so
should have done my makeup.
no, you're good. It's it's nothing too serious, but essentially like so my first question is how did you get to this point of starting to create your content? Like what prompted you to realize I need to get this information out to the world about good practice habits?
Well, it was something that I had struggled with myself for a really long time. Um, when I was in undergrad, I got a lot of injuries. I had a lot of problems with tendonitis and just various repetitive strain injuries. So I couldn't practice as much as my peers could, and as much as the pressure was on us to practice. And so I was always just like wondering how to get more efficiency, how to get the things that I needed done more quickly. And that was really like a personal sort of journey until the pandemic. Because I was trying to make a living, I was trying to get a job. I got I work for an orchestra in Mexico now. I'm the principal in
Oh, nice. Congrats.
Philip, which is in Veracruz in Mexico, and this is I'm just about to start my seventh season there, which is really hard to believe.
Wow.
But about 2 years in or 3 years in, I got so burnt out that I was going to quit. Maybe not quit music entirely, but definitely quit my job. And at first, I was like, "How can I quit my job?" Because that's like a principal job in a full-time orchestra was like the dream for me. For basically ever since I started playing the bassoon, I play bassoon, and like I knew how disaffected a lot of musicians are in general in the profession. I knew how precarious all of our working scenarios are. I knew a lot of people who were also very burnt out. And just thinking about it from my perspective and seeing how unhappy so many of us were, I was like, how can we exist like this long term? It's not good for us. So this was like winter 2019 going into 2020, and I was like, okay, this is going to be my last season. I'm going to quit and I'm going to go be a freelancer or something. And then COVID happened, and I suddenly had time to not work. And I was really lucky because I had a job, I had a salary, and they paid us for like almost a year. And we were just doing recordings and stuff. And then after the first year of the pandemic, we had our pay cut about in half. But I was better off than the the Metropolitan Opera. Like they weren't getting paid. Um, and seeing how many orchestras abandoned their musicians almost immediately in the pandemic also made me think like there is a whole lot about this atmosphere that we're living in that is really not good for us. So I moved back to my parents' house because we weren't performing, and spent a whole lot of time just thinking and trying to heal myself out of this burnout. And my my account Practice Happier basically is all of the things that I wish that I'd known when I was 20 years old, 24 years old, before I got so um, set into this universe where you have to sacrifice everything about yourself in order to make it.
I think that's such a powerful story. And
Mm.
it's so wonderful that you have this platform now where you can kind of send like these messages to your younger self,
Yeah.
like things you wish you knew, and I think that's going to help so many people. And that's why I reached out to you, because I think, we can help. I think I can help you help even more people and really get
Yeah.
that message across even more. Um,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think
It's
this
so
is like
important.
to be really great.
So much of what we hear is just like you have to be sacrificing everything in order to be excellent. And if you're not willing to make those sacrifices, then you don't want enough. And I don't think that's true. And I don't think that that's doing us any favors.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think it's interesting to hear to hear your experience in the classical music sphere, because I was a euphonium player in high school, but I mostly play jazz now, and a lot of at least for a good chunk of most jazz schools focus on like, here is your individual artistic voice and how are you going to get that out through your instrument, at least for most colleges. But it seems like there's still like a void missing. And like on the classical side, it's like you're just people are training musicians to essentially be like robots, right? It's like, can you play
Yeah,
this so
exactly.
perfectly?
Yeah, we're not trained to think about our artistic individuality unless we're soloists. And most of us are not anticipating a career as a soloist. Most of us are thinking about joining an orchestra. And the orchestra training is basically just to like slot you in as a piece of the machinery.
Yeah.
And it's but like if you're a wind player, you have a little bit more agency because you do play a lot of solos, but string players are really encouraged to just kind of erase themselves and fit in any way possible to whatever the rest of the group is doing. And I wrote my master's thesis on like how you figure out how to um, like I wouldn't have called it at the time like erase your individuality to get in like this, but looking back I feel like that there were some threads of that. Like how do you learn how to do this job in the way that allows you to fit in with every thing that you need to fit into.
Oh
um,
wow. So you dedicated like your entire thesis to that goal.
yeah. And there's a whole lot of fascinating things that happen in the brain, about like how your brain waves sync up with people when you play together. I'm sure maybe you've heard about
Mm.
studies that they've done, because it happens in every ensemble. Like you start to think alike and you start to make decisions without really consulting each other because you feel things like
Right.
just understanding the feel of the ensemble.
And
And that's
like nonverbal cues
me.
too.
Yeah, yeah. And personally, I find a lot of that to be very rewarding. Um, but if you're looking to be more of an individual, then it's not really that satisfying.
Yeah, and I'm sure, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but there aren't really that many soloist gigs out there, right? Like it's not
Right.
like most of the classical music sphere is an orchestral or military band job. It's not, you don't just immediately jump to being a soloist.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it sounds kind of
Very
like
few.
unrealistic that the schools are, you know, like
Mhm.
it's like here's how you can like interpret this, but really the reality is, because there's not many soloist gigs, it's just here's how, rather than here's how you can be your own person, it's here's how you can be the
Yeah,
14th violinist
yeah,
of the orchestra.
yeah.
And
In an industry where there are fewer and fewer jobs all the time, like
exactly, yeah, the class, especially in classical music too, like again, I think it's just so interesting seeing this in the classical side, not to create a divide or anything, but they're so different. I mean, it's not like there's a ton of jazz gigs either, but at least jazz musicians, they can form their own bands and just perform at clubs. Whereas with classical music, it's like, is this job open for
yeah,
this position in this orchestra? And does it
yeah,
even have a competitive salary? Who knows?
yeah. No, it doesn't. And most of us grow into the profession with the expectation that we are going to get hired by someone else. We don't have to be as enterprising as maybe jazz musicians are expected to be, but uh, there's still a lot of people that work as chamber musicians, like with a quartet or something, where you would have to think
Right.
about marketing yourself. But
Mhm.
that's not stuff that we learn in school. Maybe some conservatories and university departments do that now, but that was definitely not something that I learned in school in 2000s. So
Hmm. Yeah, I really hope there can be more of that because as time goes on and social media is becoming a much bigger way of musicians finding each other and getting gigs even, even I've seen even a lot of classical musicians putting together like quartets, like the Quarantine Quartet, the guitar quartet, and
yeah,
just a bunch of other groups. It's like in order to get gigs like that, you need to market yourself and know like what is your unique identity and why is this group different from all the other brass quintets in the world,
yeah,
sure there's
yeah, and finding your audience and connecting to those people is just really not something that we're ever encouraged to think about, because
yeah,
the audience is out there in their own world. Maybe the marketing department of the orchestra management is responsible for thinking about them, but I could talk a
yeah,
lot about how much I think um how bad that is for audience retention. Like, I think that
yeah,
people don't relate to musicians on the stage because we have no connection with them, and we're not
that's so
really
true,
encouraged.
yeah.
Yeah, we're not encouraged to think about that. So that's why I think like people don't come to classical concerts.
Right. Like at least with jazz concerts, physically the audience is closer to the band most of the time because it's like a smaller, intimate jazz club. And, the audience will clap after a solo or go like, say like, whoa, that was killing or whatever, they interact with the music or sometimes the band will prompt the audience to like clap along to a beat or something. There's a lot more participatory, but
Yeah,
it's that's very true. I honestly hadn't even thought about that for some time because as a jazz musician, we're very much told to like engage with the audience, but a lot of classical concerts, it's this giant concert hall with a
yeah,
giant
and
stage.
we haven't had like participatory audience interaction with the audience like that since like the early 1900s. It's become
Yeah.
maybe even earlier than that, like 1880 or something like that. So formal. Hang on, my cat is really wanting to be let in.
Oh, no worries. I've always wanted a cat.
Yeah, it's International Cat Day today, so I have to do whatever she wants.
Oh, nice.
As though I don't do whatever she wants every other day.
Yeah, and adding to what you were just saying about the audience participation, for a lot of people that don't know much about music, they might just think, "Oh, why would I go to this concert when I can just watch this video on YouTube?" And it's like
Yeah,
the same thing for them because there's
yeah,
no audience participation, so they can just watch it on a screen. Like,
yeah. Like, it doesn't matter that they're there almost. And I think a lot of
yeah,
classical musicians, maybe not so much the younger generations, but definitely when I was studying, there was this disdain for the audience that people be like, oh, the audience is coughing through all the quiet bits or whatever. Like,
mm,
if you would prefer that people not be there, why have an audience at all?
right. Yeah, like I've heard all these
It's our
stories
privilege.
about like this person sneezed during the oboe
Yeah,
solo, or this person's phone went off or
yeah.
something.
Yeah, and sure, you spend your entire life practicing this one particular solo that um, you know, is going to sound really great, and someone sneezes in the middle of it. That's a bummer,
Yeah.
but the price you pay to have a live person actually wanting to listen to you, which is a
Yeah.
privilege.
And it's so much harder with a lot of like symphonies or orchestra pieces in general because the dynamic shift is much wider than in jazz. Like there can be really quiet and intimate moments
Yeah,
where it's just a soloist. So
yeah,
if anyone makes any kind of noise, it's over,
yeah, and
right?
that's really intimidating for a lot of audience members because then people are like, "Oh, you've ruined it." You're like, "Have you?"
Yeah.
So,
And I'm sure for the musician as well, like I'm sure when you've played some solos, it's like you almost feel some kind of like tension, right? Because it's just
yeah.
you and there's like a lot of pressure. Like, Yeah, I'm sure you thought about that too, just overall, like how can your body be more in tune with the music without, how can it feel natural and not be like, oh my gosh, this is my moment and I'm so tense and nervous.
Yeah, and that happens a lot, and that's something that comes up with my clients a lot is like the physical reactions to performance anxiety. That just made
Yeah,
me think of how good I am. Like I can stop myself from sneezing if I'm in a concert, like, and I can cough without making any noise because that's, you know, what's expected of us.
yeah.
And like, what other job are you not allowed to sneeze at work, you know?
Yeah, that is
Absurd.
so interesting. I learned something new today. Yeah. When you're a classical musician in college, you have to learn how to be completely quiet. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah,
like
like there's
you
a way to tune
cannot
the
sneeze
page
or
without making,
cough or
you know, like God forbid anybody know that we are reading music and having to make noise turning the page.
right. I guess that's one positive to the technology, as
Yeah.
you just tap the screen and there you go, next
Yeah.
page.
Yeah, I still use paper actually. Like when I
Oh
practice at
wow.
home, I have an iPad and I usually practice from that, but in the orchestra we have paper and I
Hmm.
prefer that actually. Mostly just
Feel like you're
because
more connected to the music, right?
yeah, and I like if I'm marking something, I don't like how the pencil feels on how that like the Apple Pencil feels on the iPad, so I prefer a real pencil.
Oh, yeah, it feels different. Like a lot of people, we might get on a technology tangent here, but it's important. Like, um, a lot of people that I know that are musicians or not, they have this like screen protector on their iPads called Paperlike, and
Oh
it
yeah, I've
makes
heard of
the
that.
iPad like feel like you're writing on paper.
I should try that. Yeah,
Yeah, a lot of
I've been
people really
when I
like it.
write. Yeah, when I write with the pencil, I feel like I can't get it small enough, so it looks like just some kind of like crayon marking
Oh,
that a
yeah.
3-year-old would have made in music. So I'm picky about my markings though. So
Hmm. Yeah, and another question that came to my mind out of, curiosity, what were those signs that you noticed when right before COVID when you started to experience that burnout? Because I feel like this is something else that's not talked about enough. You know,
yeah, I
you felt it, but what was it that like prompted you to realize like something needs to change?
yeah, I was mad all the time. I hated everything. I was
Mm.
just so grumpy. I was complaining constantly. And like, I'm generally a little bit of a pessimistic person and I have a pretty dark sense of humor, but it was really like, nothing was making me happy from like within my own playing and with the orchestra and even among friends. I was just really, really difficult to be around. And um, I did not want to practice, and that's something that's actually been really common for me in my life. There have been a lot of times where I just don't want to practice, and for a while I was like, "Oh, I must be in the wrong career if I don't want to practice, but I still want to be a musician." But I don't agree with that. Um, I have ADHD, so
Me
if I
too.
oh awesome if
Yeah.
I don't want to do something, trying to get myself to do it is almost impossible.
Oh my
And
gosh, I feel that on
and I
so many
yeah,
levels.
and I was 38 by the time, like I was 38 when I got diagnosed. I didn't know that this was what was going on. But now that I do know, looking back, I'm like, oh, this resistance to practice makes a lot of sense.
Mm.
Um,
Because
but
it feels like something that you're forced to do, like a
yeah, yeah, and
chore.
something that's so routine, like part of the daily routine, having a consistent and predictable practice session felt like torture to me,
Mm.
and that's something else that I see a lot in a lot of my students and my clients is that like even if they're not neurodivergent, just having this expectation that you have to do this thing every single day or else your technique is going to go up in flames or something is not realistic and it's not something that we have to continue to hold ourselves to.
Yeah.
I
I,
hardly honestly I hardly ever practice anymore. I haven't, let's see what today is, I've been off work for 3 weeks. I haven't touched my instrument in 3 weeks.
mm,
um, I'm probably gonna take another week off before I get back in shape for our season opener. But mostly, if I'm practicing, I only practice because I have to, uh,
mm.
unless I want to. And yeah, I don't force myself to do it if I don't want to.
Yeah, that's so important because I've realized that too during my time as a college student. If I don't want to practice, I'm not going to get good results. Like
Absolutely. Yeah.
if I'm forcing myself to play my instrument and I'm so apathetic at the moment, I'm not going to sound good. And it's going to
Right.
sound like doo-doo. And it's going to be just so difficult trying to really make any progress because when you're in that state, I'm sure you can relate, you get frustrated so much quicker. And
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah, and you create this association with the experience that is a bad experience, and
right.
your body is going to be resisting that for you. And the next time you think about practicing, your body is going to be like, "Remember last time how terrible it was?" So it creates
Yeah.
this like perpetuating cycle that makes you
Yeah.
not want to practice.
It's just a continuous cycle. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Thank you for watching the first of many episodes of Whole Notes, an organization dedicated to promoting musicians' wellness. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to give it a like, subscribe to see more videos like this, and be on the lookout for more upcoming episodes featuring professional jazz and classical musicians, music educators, music entrepreneurs, and more. That's episode 1 of Whole Notes. Until next time.